UKMotorTalk.
Well, hello everybody, we are back. We are UK Motor Talk, and Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and all the stuff that we've missed in the meantime. Did you all have a good one?
We did. Yes, we had a very good Christmas, and indeed Happy New Year to everybody. And to all of our millions of listeners, welcome back.
Well, I think Graham is certainly still full of the Christmas festivities there. I think if normal people see double when they're drunk, then Graham is drinking for, well, probably 500,000 at least anyway. But yes, hello to the listener indeed. And David, how are you?
Well, amazed that it's a month into the new year and we're finally sort of pulling our fingers out. We've gathered again, but I think we all needed a bit of a break, didn't we? It was quite a hectic year last year. But yeah, looking forward to another year of fun and excitement on the roads. We've got some fun things coming up to do this year, and we'll be no doubt talking about those as things go on. But what's been happening in the world? I understand there's been some excitement over in Maranello.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know about you lot, but I suppose I'm fairly lucky that I've not had that many jobs. I've always been employed. It's not through a lack of employment status, but you know, I've been at my current place of employment 18, 19 years. So it's, you know, and before that, work placements and work for my parents, so I'm lucky to have not had too many jobs. But the last time I started a new job, there wasn't that much publicity over it. I mean, some bloke gets a job at a new car company, and Jesus, that's had some column inches and pictures and likes and clicks and mentions and engagement and whatever else, hasn't it? But to be fair, I also remember the first day I turned up for work where I work now, and it's a slightly more relaxed dress code. You know, it's polo shirts and logoed uniforms and that kind of thing. And I turned up suited and booted, and I was like, oh, who's this twat in the full suit here? And but yeah, I don't think I look quite as good as Lewis turning up in his suit on his first day, because Jesus, he looks villainous, doesn't he? He looks like he means business. He is not mucking about with this, is he? He's fired up for this.
Was that his new company car beside him in that?
Probably. It's whatever he wants, isn't it? He's Lewis. That's it.
The best they can do. That thing looks about 30 odd years old.
It's a 288 GTO, if I'm not mistaken.
F40,
you are much mistaken.
F40, but yes,
yeah,
old.
Indeed, you're right.
It's I'm not sure. Maybe he gets a company car tax break on that. I mean, Italy does have some weird rules when it comes to company car tax. I seem to remember them doing 2-litre V8s and things at some point to get under the tax breaks. But yes, he's looking very Mafia Don with his overcoat draped over his shoulders. Yes, he's. You better show him some respect and all that sort of thing on the occasion of his daughter's wedding or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know how the company car tax works over there. I mean, just as we're looking at company car tax on pickups about to go through the roof in this country, although I'd imagine there's different company car tax rules for Ferrari, because Ferrari. So just why not? Indeed, why is it Ferrari? Oh, okay, fine. Off you go.
There were in the 70s, you could, in most Ferrari models, specify a 2-litre straight 6, I think it was. And that was purely for taxation purposes. I don't think they made many.
How times have changed. 2 litres and 6 cylinders just for tax purposes, whereas now it's like, oh, does it emit more CO2 than opening a can of Coke? Yes, well, that's it. It's taxed out of existence, isn't it? So how times have changed. But he looks good in red, doesn't he, already? I think he seems settled in and happy, and he's got that spring in his step again, hasn't he? I mean, it's I've had a weird arc with Lewis, I suppose. I was a very, very big fan of his when he first joined the sport in 2007, because he was off to a cracking start, sticking it to Alonso and doing well with him, and you know, Button didn't have a good car at the time, so it was very easy to support Lewis as a Brit doing well and fighting up at the front, and so close in the heartbreak in the first year, just got it in the second year, and Massa on the podium being able to tell all of Brazil that they had his heart without making it look like a funny salute, but that's probably another story altogether. And it was a good arc, but then I sort of went off him over the years, and I think it's a bit like Vettel in the Red Bull years. I wasn't a fan of Vettel when he was in the Red Bull. I was quite a big fan of Vettel in a Ferrari, and a very big fan of Vettel in an Aston Martin. So I I don't know. There's a very big part of me that wants Lewis to get this 8th and do it this year, just to right a few wrongs and just round off, finish his masterpiece in style. Whether he hangs around to try and get a 9th or whether it's an 8th and done and that's it, just to finish the story. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's certainly shaping up to be a cracker of a season, though, isn't it? If the end of last season was based on anything, I think we're in for a good start to the season, if nothing else.
They've already had a little glitch, I believe. I heard a story that there was a bit of an off and very, very nearly into the barriers in the Fiorano on his first go, because there was some sort of, it's all being hazed over as to what it was, but some sort of fault with the pedal setup, particularly the brake pedal. So
no, see, I'd heard it was, I'd read that story, and I think it was a bit of a mistranslation. I think because later on in the story they started talking about the steering wheel, so I don't think they were talking about pedal. I think they were talking about paddle. And I think that was a slightly miswritten story. But I think Sky Sports had been reporting on the day, and they said it was incredibly foggy and misty. It was slightly foggy and misty, but the camera lens was more foggy and misty than anything else. All the comments on the video were, well, if you wiped the camera lens, it won't be foggy anymore. And you could just see this big blob in the middle of the screen where they'd not cleaned the camera lens. So I suppose a little bit like the George Russell. Is it raining? No. You sure? Yes. Is anyone else reporting rain? No. Are you crying? Oh yeah, it could be that. It was a little bit like that, just because your window's wet, it's either the window cleaner's in or it's raining, one of the two. But no, I think there was the odd lock-up and bits and pieces, but that just shows that he's pushing it and starting to see what the car does, and, it's Lewis, isn't it? Although it's an old car,
that's what he's going to do.
Academy tyres, he's going to push that thing as fast as he can, as quick as he can, and get stuck in, isn't he? Because all data is good data, even if it's slightly odd tyres and an older car. It's getting used to the feel and the whatever else of how they designed the car.
Given the quality of his teammate and the fact that his teammate was doing the afternoon stint, I think he felt he had to make some sort of a point. He wasn't going to be a complete pushover, because that isn't going to be an easy relationship, I suspect.
It's on paper, I would probably say we're going to see Charles quicker in qualifying, because I think Charles is one of the quickest flat-out qualifiers at the moment. Races, possibly another story. I mean, I think it's similar to Lewis and Jenson in a way, because Lewis was, I think, faster over a single lap than Jenson, but on balance over the 3 years, Jenson scored more points. One of the years beat him flat out, so it was a lot closer than people thought. I could see that going the other way, and I think there's maybe some of the where of Charles is, his unreal pace comes from sometimes. He's driving at 100 point something % of the limit, which you can get away with a lot of the time, but not all of the time. So it's that just going over the limit all the time. Charles occasionally will fall off or bump a barrier, which Lewis is maybe less prone to, I think.
Yeah, quite so. I would quite agree. That's where I think the age and experience does tell. So he may be not quite so quick, not quite so urgent, but experience will benefit him a lot. But he's got to get used to a car that Charles is already fairly used to. 26 is going to be different. It'll be really no holds barred between them with the new cars, because it'll be starting from fresh for both of them. Charles would have a little bit of an advantage this year.
Yeah, I think he's more settled and more integrated into the team, isn't he? But it was maybe slightly telling that I think it was the picture of Charles winning at Monza, and the picture he'd taken on the podium had the most number of likes of any F1 related Insta, twat, gram, twit, pic, post, wherever he put it up. And that was way out in front of everything else, but the picture of Lewis just stood next to a car on his first day at work in his suit got more. So that's again, that's the wave of positivity and momentum behind it. Like I say, will this just give him that spring in the step? Is it that Nigel Mansell home advantage? Oh well, actually, if he's got all of Team LH and the Tifosi and Italy behind him, and all of America and most of the UK, it would appear. It's, is that just going to tip him back to his best again?
Do you think the Tifosi are going to sort of clutch him close to their bosom? Because I mean, they're a welcoming bunch to anyone who throws themselves in wholeheartedly with Ferrari, aren't they? And if he comes up with the goods, he could be Il Leone Mark II.
Yeah, I think they do. Anybody who embraces the spirit or well, even just drives for the team, there was an Eddie Irvine story, and he was hacking through the mountains in Italy somewhere in his Lancia Delta Integrale, and he's absolutely pushing like hell, driving like an absolute madman, as he always did. And he got pulled over by the Italian constabulary, and pulls over, wind the window down. Oh, here we go. He's Eddie, my friend. And he said, well, we went for lunch, and then I ended up being godparent to one of their kids, and then we all got drunk and had a good time, and then they gave me a lift home, and that was it. So, if that's what happens to somebody like Eddie Irvine, who, never hit the heights of Schumacher or Charles or anyone like that, had a couple of race wins and did okay, but by no means a legend of the sport, let's say, and that's how he was treated. So yeah, I think the Italian public and the Tifosi have taken him into their hearts already. The number of people gathered at the stop or the bridge or the overpass near one of the corners, in the past when Vettel appeared and he had his, my first day at Ferrari helmet and everything, there were a few people there. It was rather more packed this time, and I think it had been packed out for quite a few days with people just waiting for his arrival. It's a bit more, I don't know, loads of people have likened it more to Schumacher's arrival, which is odd because, Schumacher at the time, 2-time world champion, yes, very good, but, is the arrival of a 4-time all-dominant champion not bigger news? And then so you'd expect them to be a bigger Vettel fanfare than a Schumacher fanfare, but then you can see why it's just gone into overdrive with Lewis, can't you? So the more eyes it draws onto Formula One, I think the better, though, because the more people who think, oh, this is getting a bit of press, I'll give this a go and watch this. Let's see what happens. It's only a good thing for the sport, isn't it? Because, as I say, I think this season should, hopefully, if it carries on like last season did, be competitive and unpredictable and close fought. So if you've never watched F1 before, it's probably a good first season to watch, I would say.
I was sort of, you mentioned two particular names there that I think are two ends of a sort of popularity spectrum. When, Andrew will remember this, when we first did some stuff with Lewis, when he was at McLaren, he did some stuff at Goodwood, and I was very, very impressed with the way he just worked the crowd line, the way he played to that crowd before he got in the car, and then he couldn't resist doing burnouts and so on in the firing up area for the amusement of the crowd. And he was just a warm individual. He sold me. I liked him from then on. Eddie Irvine, I've found very much just the opposite to that, and certainly at that very same venue on the Sunday afternoon when he broke the half shaft, that really pissed his own team off because they didn't have a spare. It wasn't time to change it, and the wonderful demonstration run that he'd planned didn't happen because he broke the car.
I'd be irritated if I broke my shaft as well, to be fair.
Well, he broke the car in a careless manner, let's say. So it didn't go down terribly well with the crowd. Didn't go down terribly well with me because he was still getting in the bloody helicopter and promising me an interview as he mounted his steed to rush off into the sky.
I think we got slightly distracted there, so we'll let Andrew edit that out to his heart's content. Yeah. But anyway, we were yakking about some bloke's first day in a Ferrari, didn't we? But I think sort of staying kind of on that subject, but maybe somebody's last day in a Ferrari, perhaps? We seem to have had a spate of Ferrari F40s, just as Lewis is stood there in front of rather a pristine one. There's a couple of rather second-hand looking F40s, I would say roaming around, but lying around somewhere. One worse than the other. I mean, the less significant one was Lando Norris's Ferrari F40, so not with him at the wheel. There was a mishap and I think a curbed wheel and a smashed bumper, but not too bad. But there was a rather more significant event, shall we say, in an F40 involving a mechanic. And from what I hear, the car had been in for some work on the turbochargers because they hadn't been turboing and doing all the turbo work properly. And then I think the road test was kind of to make sure the turbos were turboing, and they definitely turboed and spat the car off sideways into the scenery, didn't they? And it was, I mean, why is there a lamppost? Why, when something like that happens, is there always a lamppost just there waiting, just jumping out of the bushes, ready to smack into the side of a car and do even more damage to it?
If there isn't a lamppost, there's an organic lamppost.
Well, yeah, I suppose a lamppost is a better thing
always
to
a
hit
tree.
than a tree, isn't it? Because I think lampposts at least give way a bit.
Yeah, trees tend to be pretty unyielding. I mean, if you're going to hit something, try and pick where you end up. Bushes are preferable to fences, and things with 4x4 oak posts you don't want to tangle with. And trees
Definitely
tend
not.
to be
Definitely
largely
not.
immovable. If one is to believe some of the things that I've seen recently, houses are getting easier to tumble down by driving cars into them. I saw recently one of these bits where they were trying to pull a BMW at the side of a house, which fortunately it had entered at the ground floor level, but in the early hours of the morning, and the people were asleep upstairs. There was, I should think, 6 or 7 feet of the BMW in the lounge. It's quite difficult to do that.
That's probably about right. I think from having gone through a brick wall in a Fiesta, not with me in the driver's seat, I hasten to add, it was sort of through it and kind of over it, and but I think if it had been a very tall brick wall, we'd have just gone through it. But it's I suppose the nature of the buildings, isn't it? They're not designed for that. But, trees don't have a crumple zone. Houses don't have a crumple zone. Lampposts do. That's the whole idea. Central reservation barriers are designed to stretch and catch you and throw you back into the carriage from whence you came, rather than allowing you through to the opposite carriageway. But I think all the commentary did make me chuckle on why is somebody driving a car like that if they can't handle it and blah blah blah. I mean, from having driven an F40 at very low speed in a car park, I can confirm they're an absolute piglet to drive. The clutch is heavy and stiff, and it's kind of an on or off, and the throttle is stiff and clunky, and again, it's kind of an on or off. And from chatting to the chap who owned the car, it was, when it gets up to high speed, it's very much on or off, and it's, not really happy or comfortable unless you're doing 60 miles an hour plus and everything's warm and up to temperature, and ideally you're on a track with it and the tyres are good, and if the tyres are too old, then you've certainly got an issue, because that's another problem with cars like this, isn't it? They might have 5 mil of tread remaining, but the mileage these cars tend to do, well, those tyres could be 15 years old, couldn't they? And they're probably not too much good on a damp day in the UK in January. I mean, it's probably not an ideal time to be checking if the turbos work in most cars, let alone something like an F40.
I can remember driving, I think it was a 512 BB in the late 80s, and I commented at the time, the clutch was the last time I'd driven a clutch that was as unforgiving and heavy as that. I was driving a dump truck on a building site. It was a bloody awful thing to drive. Wonderful steering, wonderful power, but in terms of, you needed to be a Superman to drive the bloody thing.
You can almost imagine the smell in the cabin of both of those guys. They're not known for their ventilation, those things, so I'd have been sliding the plastic window open pretty damn quick, because new trousers required on both occasions, I should imagine. That it's not a good way to tell your friends, you know what happened? You lent me your car. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I will get the seats cleaned as well, but there's something else I do need to tell you. That's,
I think there's a bit more that needs cleaning than the seats, but
yes,
I mean, but by the damage looked obviously significant, as it was on its side and upside down in a lamppost, so most cars will look fairly bananaed, but of course the F40 is carbon Kevlar tub monocoque chassis type thing. All the panels are just light, flimsy as you like, bolt on, about as thick as biscuit tin, but again, carbon Kevlar, aren't they? So any sort of impact or bump, and those will go flying off in many directions, because they're designed for lightness, not rigidity or ruggedness. I would say it maybe looked worse than it was, but actually I think it was fairly bad.
It wouldn't be good. I seem to remember sort of a few years ago, if you remember the that series Fast and Loud, Richard Rawlins with his Gas Monkey Garage. I used to quite enjoy that, even though so much of it was staged, like so many of these so-called reality shows. They did an F40, didn't they? And they really sort of had their work cut out pulling it back on a jig. It was substantially knackered, and so I think, given what I've seen in that video and the fact the thing, like you say, ended up turning turtle and backwards and lamppost coming down and the like, that's not going to be an easy fix. But I still reckon that'll be an insurance company paying to fix it because there's so few of them, and that its value will be such.
Where do you go and buy another one? That's the issue with these things, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's the insurance puts you in the same position. So if it can't put you in the same position by buying one, it's a bit like Nick Mason would always say about his 250. He said, "Well, I can do what I like with it. It doesn't matter what I do. They'll have to fix it because they just will, because you're not buying another one, so you could easily rebuild it for the value of it. So yes, I do what I like and that's it, they fix it. So yeah, they probably will patch it up."
If you read his book Into the Red, where he talks about how he bought the GTO, and having bought it with sort of the sparkly dust in his eyes, and it was a wonderful purchase and so on, then he got it home and then he started to look closely at it, and then he spent about the same amount of money again. It cost him a lot of money to start with, just on putting it to rights where it had been cobbled together over many, many years, which was a bloody shame. But if there's only 36, or was it 37 of them, you're going to spend the money, you're going to do the job, and you're going to get it fixed.
Yeah, not a bad investment, was it? But no, let's obviously firstly hopefully say that whoever was driving it is okay and unscathed and uninjured, other than probably a very bruised ego. But I think it's all too easy to look at modern cars with the same amount or even more horsepower. I mean, what sort of power are those? 450-ish?
400, I think.
400.
By modern standards, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but we've driven cars at various test days with way more power than that. A friend of mine's just bought an everyday dog car that he drives around in that's 690-something horsepower. But it's all too easy to look at all these cars and go, "Oh, well, I just put my foot down and it's dead easy." Yeah, as I say, I've driven cars with way more horsepower than that, and you just plant your right foot and the little light on the dashboard flickers to let you know something's going on, but you're really not paying attention to that because you're too busy staring at the horizon because it's coming up on you very fast, and the electronics sort it all out. But even if it's in something, non-electric or turbocharged these days, the torque curves in anything turbocharged is so much smoother, and, older turbo cars were just, again, a bit like the clutch. They were on or off, weren't they? I remember driving the Mark 1 Focus RS, and it was nothing, hello, kick in the nuts, and off you went with it. And 212, 215 brake horsepower in that felt so much more alive and raw than the Focus STs that I drove later on that were 250 brake horsepower, but they just built and were smooth, and there was no lairiness to them, no nothing, and whatever else. So all the people saying, "Oh, well, my car's more powerful than that, and I don't do that, you must be a crap driver." It's a different car, it's a different torque curve, and as I say, I'd be very keen to know how old the tyres on it were.
It's certainly a different era with a different number of electronics, etc. I can remember driving, I think it was one of the continuation Cobras, which, if I remember rightly, they were then a 350 possibly, or something like that, and just second gear out of a roundabout, and it decided to swap ends and kept swapping ends. Luckily, there was nothing in the way as I went the wrong way across the A27. It just got away from me. But you got no warning with a car like that. There were no electronics to save you. There was nothing. It either planted itself in the hedge, or you managed to gather it up and you went and changed your trousers and carried on with your road test. And that was the way it was. I think we...
simpler times.
Former colleague of yours and I nearly lost Ford's press fleet GT40 when a farm gate swung open across us. There was a lot of braking went on in a very, very short space of time and of space, so as not to launch this thing into a 5-bar gate, which was it was close.
The electronic aids and all this sort of stuff, there's many manufacturers are often maligned because you can't properly turn them off. And a lot of the time, actually, for 99.9% of situations, not turning them all off is probably more sensible. I mean, there should still be a perfect override for I'm on a track, or no, I want to be a hooligan, I want to destroy some tyres, I'm in a big empty car park, I want to dick about and have some fun. That should be possible. But I did the skid pan thingy at Goodwood, and it was a real eye-opener, because it's all very low speed and it's really slick and well watered, the track.
It's great fun.
But you do the first thing and he says, right, well, let's just leave all the aids on and just see what happens, so give it full lock and you can hear everything grabbing at everything, and then you boot it and off you go. So, copes with it all fairly well. Then they put it in sports mode, and then you think, yes, and you can hang the back end out. Then they put it in sort of sports plus mode, and you're like, I'm a drifting god, I've got the hang of this. Right, let's turn it all off, and vudum. So I'm still spinning. It's like, yeah, we're spinning. It's like, it's been about 5 minutes and we're still spinning. How is this still happening? But it just shows you, even just that little bit of electronic intervention, and then you spend the entire day with them just about getting you back to the level of where the electronics in Sports Plus mode got you to without even thinking about it. So there's a lot of gone into the electronic aids in cars, and it does show. So it's, how many accidents have been saved and how many blushes have been saved. If that car had even rudimentary traction control, I think it would have probably avoided that. Old tyres, cold tyres, laggy, spiky turbo, and off you go, and that's it. Old
tyres and as you say, cold tyres. One of my favourite all-time drives is C-Type Jaguar, which was on cross plies, and it cross plies with very soft walls, side walls, and every roundabout was just a complete adventure. It was great fun. It was one of the most entertaining cars I ever drove. But I gave a neighbour of mine a lift on it, just for a couple of miles, and I had to stop, and he phoned his wife from a phone box and said, "Come and get me." It was just too frightening. It was too noisy.
Where are you? I'm in a phone
loud. He was safe in the phone box, but he didn't feel like he was safe in the car. And I was just having a whale of a time. It was just a wonderful car to drive.
It's I think the old tyres as well is possibly a thing. I managed to acquire some Team Dynamics track wheels for our Fiesta, and they had some old semi-slick tyres, and I had no idea how old they are, but I thought, well, I'll bolt them on and see what happens. If I take them on a track day and can maybe get some heat into them, they might be all right and they might clean up. And the first time I lent on them going into St Mary's, there was absolutely no grip on the rear at all. Absolutely nothing. I think I'd just about got enough heat into the fronts for them to work, but the rear's stone cold and old, and the car just went round like a top, and there was nothing in the world would have caught that. So it's if those tyres were anything like that, then I think that's probably it. But here's to a speedy recovery for the mechanic, and also a speedy. Actually, no, we don't want a speedy recovery for the car, do we? We want a passionate, intensive care and attention to detail recovery for the car, and hopefully that's back on the road as well. But a cautionary tale: check your tyres and check the age as well as the tread depth.
Wouldn't mind seeing the documentary of the rebuild of that car. I don't suppose we ever will, but it would be fascinating.
Be nice to make the documentary of fixing the car.
I was putting us in the frame.
That's not a bad idea. So if you are the lucky people entrusted with bringing that particular F40 back to its former glory, and you want us to document it, yes, drop us a line. We are at UKMotorTalk pretty much everywhere,
and we're very discreet, and we'll sign NDAs for anything. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, we'll do what you like. It's absolutely fine. If we sort of finish up on probably more sedate, well, you don't get much more sedate than a parked car, do you? And, I think for the environment, you don't get much better than a parked car, do you? I mean, the best thing you could possibly do with an evil, gas-guzzling, polluting, NOx-emitting, spewing, particulate, horrible car is park it up. So, I don't know, local councils, what are they incentivising doing for parking them up? Are they cutting parking charges for such cars, or
no? They're cutting the cost of residents' parking permits. This is something I think that's going to come to a lot of local authorities. I mean, local authorities are run by accountants almost inevitably, and despite the fact that they haven't done too well in running them in recent years, all the councils are cash strapped. They can't meet their statutory liabilities in many cases. But certainly one close to me, and I won't name them, I won't give them the pleasure of naming them, I did so already this morning on the radio. But in this particular case, they decided to halve for owners of electric cars the cost of a residence parking permit. That seems like a good deal. The flip side of that coin was that same local authorities putting up all its other parking charges for the rest of us ordinary mortals that don't own electric cars yet, or maybe don't even want to yet. All of those are going up on average 45 to 55%.
Hang on, I can guarantee you the only time an electric car uses or produces any CO2 is when it's parked, because nobody's yet quite put induction wireless charging into the road. So the only time an EV will produce emissions is when you are charging it. I've got an internal combustion car parked in a garage. It's not producing any CO2s at the moment because it's not going anywhere. The only time it produces CO2s is when I'm driving it. So surely you're doing this the wrong way round, aren't you?
I was doing a little a back of envelope calculation. Let's say you're in a town somewhere, Nowheresville probably, with 100,000 cars, and maybe 10% of those cars, maybe, and I think that's optimistic, are electric cars. Of those, maybe half have got access to a resident permit, designated parking area, so that they can receive that 50% discount or whatever it is. So that's 95% of the rest of us that can't afford, won't afford, don't want, whatever reason, or can't afford a designated parking bay, and have to park anywhere we go. So
it's even less than that, because where do you normally park your EV of an evening? On your driveway, next to your charger that's bolted to the side of your house. Because one of the biggest barriers to EV adoption is I don't have a driveway, so I have nowhere to charge it overnight. So again, it's even more minutiae, the number of EVs that are parked on a road of an evening.
So let's say it's 97.5% of those 100,000 cars that are then paying wherever they go, because it's almost impossible to go anywhere now or stop anywhere without paying some form of parking charge. All the accountants have worked that out. They're not giving us anything. They're taking away. So, if they're giving it to you with one hand, the other arm is now missing everything up to the elbow because that's how much they've stolen out of your pocket. So it's going to happen. This is a local authority close to me who are determined to do this. Interestingly, when I was doing something about this on the radio this morning, that local authority didn't find it possible to put up a spokesman. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, hardly a surprise, maybe they can't get out of bed. I didn't particularly enjoy the experience, but nevertheless, I fought our motorist corner. And they might as well have had the decency to come and fight their corner, but perhaps they didn't feel that their arguments were strong enough to do so. Either way, if one is doing it, and it is being talked about elsewhere in the country, it will happen everywhere because it's such a good dodge from a local authority's point of view, and potentially can make them an awful lot of money. Many, many years ago, and I'm going back a very long time, I worked for a local authority, and I was intrigued then by the fact that the parking departments were always the fastest growing departments. There was so much money sloshing around in them. They would put on another tier of management every year, at least, sometimes 2 in a year, because they could afford to. I suspect a lot of local authorities are still a bit like that.
Parking and the whole, issue around parking and residence parking and whatever else is I think it's changed over the years, because I get the whole idea of residence parking, and the road I used to live on was reasonably-ish close to town, and we were consulted once on, do you want residence parking up and down your road? And I said, well, I've got a garage and a parking space, so I couldn't give a toss, but no. And it was at a certain distance. If you want to park and walk into town, good for you. That's getting your step count up, so that's okay. I'm on board with that. Yes, I get you need somewhere to park your car if you live nearer to town. But then, of course, it's that daytime, evening, where do you park in town if you want to go and visit the high street and use some shops kind of thing. I think this is all just contributing to the death of the high street. And it's, this is not UK economics talk, so we probably won't get too much into it. But surely you want to be inviting people into towns and parking nearer to towns, because it's people that either go and work there or shop there or do whatever. Make parking your car, make not driving your car cheaper, not more expensive. Surely it wants to be that should be the incentive. I tend to buy, if we do, on the rare occasions we do go into our local town, I'll park just outside where it's residents parking, paid to park, this, that, the other, and we have a little walk along the seafront, and it's nice, and it gets your step count up, and it's whatever else. But it's that, it's the incentive of, my residents parking is half the price, is not enough to tempt you into an EV, but doubling or adding to the cost of a residence parking for a non-EV is just, it's taking the piss, isn't it? Because what if you can't afford an EV? It's, EVs are, I know we're seeing a new range of Dacia Springs, and I think we've had the Fiat Grande Panda has been launched today, and the EV's about 23, 24, so that's far more reasonable priced. The Puma Gen E, or Jenny, however you want to pronounce it, has been announced, and that's around about 30 grand, so that's about the same price as the internal combustion one. But again, that's for a brand new car, and it's £30,000. And that's not in everybody's wheelhouse, especially with everything that's going on at the moment. So why just screw that extra little bit of cash out of somebody that's running around in a 2008 Ford Fiesta 1.25, because it keeps going and it keeps chugging, and that's all they can afford, and they're too busy trying to put the heating on and put a bit of food on their plates, because a weekly shop is now £7 million instead of a couple of £100 or whatever it used to be. It's just not the way to do it. I think with everything going on in this country at the moment, it's just give us another couple of quid, because everything else is going up, so why not? It's not on. Well, it's not on.
Well, it's opportunistic, it's greenwashing, it's virtue signalling, and it's also yet another example of the motorists getting kicked in the nads, as we have done for years and years and years. Road fund licence has been nowhere near the roads for as long as I can remember. It's just an excuse. So. We're the low-hanging fruit, we're the easy target, and this is just yet another example of it. Cars bad, charge, lots of money. I mean, it isn't just electric cars, it's cars that are way below the CO2 threshold. Obviously, your electric car is at the bottom of that. I think,
of course.
Reading the article there, I think you would probably find that there's some very small and very efficient cars that would probably do fairly well. But the point is, yes, if you really want to beat the system, it's an electric car or it's a very efficient plug-in hybrid of some sort, isn't it? And again, they're not cheap, as you so rightly said.
Just a little footnote, something I saw yesterday, which I don't recall having seen before. In West London, parking in a usual venue car park we visit occasionally, it was full up, we couldn't. So we parked in the street outside, which had full width parking bays down one side of a domestic street, houses all the way down it. And on the other side, I thought, these parking bays are a bit narrow. And something that then when I got out of the car to check it, that I'd never seen before, the parking bays were half width. And the other half width was clearly marked out on the pavement.
Yep.
So you had a full-size parking bay, but you had to park it on the pavement, 50% of the car.
Think of the alloys, the curbed alloys.
No. There was no diminution in the parking charges when I checked out the sign. It's not as though you're getting 50% discount because we've only given you half a parking bay. Nope, we're maximising the available space. You could just get one car down the middle, but only if the other car was parked halfway across the pavement. God knows what it would have been like pushing a twin buggy down that street, because you'd have had to be in the middle of the road.
That's not too good. There's the odd road that I park down where I think, it's a bit narrow. So, I'd much rather pop it up on the verge or on the curb. And, outside my parents' old house was a typical example of that. It was one of these roads that looks nice and wide until you're driving down it and there's two SUVs parked either side and a bus coming the other way, and it's not that wide. So I'd generally always pop two wheels up on the curb, but there was a drop curb outside, so it was a very nice smooth up onto the drop curb, up onto the actual curb, and two wheels on the flagstones, and off you go. So you weren't on the grass, you weren't taking it, minimising that. But it's, you wouldn't want to park a car there normally, reversing it up onto the curb and scraping your alloys, would you?
Particularly in this instance, the curbstones looked like they'd been carved straight out of a cliff face in Cornwall somewhere. They were just massive curbs of granite. do you an awful lot of damage if you don't approach them with some care.
Yeah, I think in your big SUV with some big squishy tyres, it's fine. But it's I think I remember I was heading home from work one night and there'd been a bump or something had come up, so the police were directing cars through and trying to get cars round or whatever else. And I was like, oh, you have to go. Oh no, oh hang on. And the normal route was if one car went up on the curb, then another car could get through the other way. And I looked at the copper and I looked at my wheels and I pointed at the wheels and went, oh yeah, hang on, bear with. And he ran all the way back through and stopped all the other traffic so I could go through without curbing the wheels, because I had big, stupid, shiny alloy wheels and skinny little rubber band tyres on my MR2 at the time. But at least the copper took some sympathy on me for on that occasion anyway. But I think all of this kind of stuff goes back to the... As you say, with the parking spaces and the size and everything, this we're doing this all wrong. It surely should be on weight and space. Why give a residence parking discount to an EV? Because EVs tend to be big and bulky and heavy, so they take up lots of room. Surely you should be giving discounts to cars based on weight or size. You have a two-seater, sort of narrow chassis, minimalist car, that should get a residence parking discount, surely. So I think this goes back to the idea of tax breaks for Caterham 7s, Ariel Atoms and Lotus Elises, and tax everything else that's big and heavy. Sorry, Dave, but your Luxo bars, you've got to pay another couple of quid. Sorry.
Well, in every single way I already am.
I realised recently that the main reason that local authorities have stopped allowing you to put coins in meters, certainly having parked right in the middle of central London recently, just off Trafalgar Square, albeit fairly briefly, there is no human way that you could get coins to enter that machine fast enough. You will always be timed out. So that's why it's got to be by card, or you're strong-armed into joining some bloody fatuous scheme that makes a huge amount of money. You just could not get coin of the realm in there fast enough, and I'm talking 2 quid coins, because that's what it cost every 30 seconds or something.
Oh dear.
Shafted again. We've been shafted again.
I was going to say, I thought it would make that a slightly more sedate end to it, but I think that's raised everybody's blood pressure more than enough, hasn't it? So it's probably time to park this on our driveway or in our garage of an evening. So it's that's probably the best place to leave it. So I've been Jim. Thank you very much, and welcome back to 2025. And it's nearly February already, so we're nearly a 12th of the way through the year. So that's gone a bit silly quick.
And I've been Graham, and I've seemed to have done a lot of emitting myself this evening. So thanks for listening.
And I've been Dave, and a little bit of consumer advice if you are taking your Ferrari F40 out on the roads this weekend. 2 words: turbo lag. Take care, there you go, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.
UKMotorTalk, a First Take Media production.